A small coffee shop in the suburbs of Seattle buzzed with the gentle hum of weekend evening chatter. Couples leaned close over steaming mugs, sharing quiet laughs under the warm glow of hanging pendant lights that cast golden pools on wooden tables. The air carried the rich scent of freshly ground beans and cinnamon pastries, mingling with the faint melody of soft jazz from hidden speakers. It was the kind of place where new beginnings felt possible, where loneliness could be tucked away for a few hours. But at the corner table farthest from the door, an unexpected silence had fallen like a sudden shadow. Lucas Reed sat there, his fingers tracing the rim of his untouched latte. At 37, he was a software engineer who worked from home, his days filled with code reviews and virtual meetings, his nights dedicated to his 5-year-old son, Milo. It had been nearly 6 years since his wife, Sarah, died in a car accident on a rainy highway commute. The loss had hollowed him out, leaving him to navigate fatherhood alone in their modest 2-bedroom house on a quiet cul-de-sac. He'd rebuilt his life around Milo, the boy's infectious giggles, his endless questions about dinosaurs, his sticky hugs after preschool. Dating that had seemed impossible, a betrayal of the family they'd once been. But lately the emptiness had grown heavier, and a friend had nudged him toward a dating app for single parents. "Just try," she'd said. So here he was in a crisp button-down shirt that felt too formal, waiting for a woman named Rachel Harper. She arrived 5 minutes later, coat dusted with the light mist from outside. Rachel was 35, a bank teller with a steady routine of early mornings and late evenings shuttling her daughter to dance classes. Her profile had been simple, a photo of her smiling in a park, no kids in frame, just a note about loving quiet hikes and mystery novels. In person, she was even more approachable, blonde hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, a soft sweater over jeans and eyes that held a quiet depth, like they carried stories she wasn't ready to tell. They shook hands awkwardly, and Lucas pulled out her chair, his heart pounding in a way it hadn't in years. The conversation started easily enough. They talked about favorite childhood books. Hers was The Secret Garden, his Where the Wild Things Are. They laughed over shared gripes about overpriced coffee and the chaos of grocery shopping with little ones in tow. Lucas found himself relaxing, surprised by how natural it felt. Rachel's smile was gentle, her laugh soft but genuine. There was something familiar about her, a shared understanding in the way she spoke of long days and quiet nights. For the first time in ages, he felt seen not as a widower or a single dad, but as just Lucas. But then, midway through a story about a disastrous attempt at baking cookies, Rachel's expression shifted. Her eyes dropped to her hands, fingers twisting around the handle of her water glass. The laughter faded, replaced by a tension that thickened the air between them. She took a deep breath, her voice barely above a whisper. "Lucas, you can leave. I'm a single mom." The words hung there simple, yet loaded like a shield she'd raised at the last moment. It wasn't a dark secret or a dramatic revelation, just the truth of her life, spoken with the weight of past rejections. Her eyes flicked up to his, braced for the inevitable. The polite excuse, the quick goodbye, the door closing on yet another possibility. Rachel had been here before with men who saw her daughter as baggage, who vanished when reality intruded on the fantasy of a fresh start. Ellie was her world, a bright-eyed 6-year-old with a passion for stuffed rabbits and bedtime stories, but to others she was a complication. Lucas froze the fork halfway to his mouth. The words pulled him back to his own early days after Sarah's death, night staring at the ceiling, convinced no one would want a package deal with a grieving man and a toddler. He'd felt unlovable, burdened by his loss. Hearing Rachel echo that fear now, it stirred something deep within him, a mix of empathy and resolve. He set down his fork, meeting her gaze steadily. A small smile tugged at his lips, not forced, but warm. "Then maybe we both know how hard it is to stay. So let's just stay a little longer tonight." Rachel blinked, her grip on the glass loosening slightly. She didn't respond right away, but she didn't stand up either. The silence stretched not uncomfortable now, but thoughtful. Lucas flagged the waiter and ordered a slice of brownie to share. "It's probably too sweet," he said lightly, "but life's too short to skip dessert." She nodded, a tentative smile breaking through. They split the brownie, the chocolate melting on their forks, and for the first time that evening, the conversation deepened. Rachel shared a funny story about Ellie insisting on wearing a princess crown to the grocery store. Lucas countered with Milo's obsession with building forts out of couch cushions. As the minutes turned into an hour, the initial shock faded, replaced by a quiet connection. Neither knew where this would lead, but for now, staying felt right. Before we continue, please tell us where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. The days following their first meeting at the coffee shop passed in a blur for Lucas. He woke up expecting the usual routine, brewing strong coffee before Milo stirred checking emails while the boy ate his cereal, then dropping him off at preschool with a quick hug and a promise of playground time later. But now, there was something new, a faint buzz of anticipation each time his phone lit up. It started the very next morning. Rachel's message arrived just as Lucas was pouring Milo's milk. "Thanks for last night. The brownie was too sweet but worth it. Hope your day goes well." Simple, unassuming, but it made him smile in a way he hadn't in years. He replied, casually sharing a photo of Milo's latest artwork, a scribbled cat that looked more like a lumpy bear with whiskers. "From the resident artist. He says it's a super cat ready to save the day." Rachel responded quickly. "Adorable. Ellie would love it. She talks to her stuffed rabbits like they're plotting world domination. No pressure, no declarations, just easy exchanges that felt like dipping toes into a warm pool after a long winter." Over the next week, their conversations wove into the fabric of daily life. Lucas found himself typing messages during lunch breaks describing Milo's obsession with building blanket forts that inevitably collapsed into giggles. Rachel shared snippets of Ellie's world, how the girl insisted on mismatched socks because they make adventures better, or the time she sang an entire Disney soundtrack to calm a thunderstorm. They avoided the heavy topics at first, no mentions of lost spouses or the ache of single parenting. Instead, it was the little things' favorite rainy day movies. Hers was Amelie, his The Princess Bride, the best microwave hacks for quick dinners, the exhaustion of bedtime routines that somehow ended in magic. Lucas appreciated the slowness of it all. After Sarah's death, he'd thrown himself into survival mode, every decision filtered through what was best for Milo. Dating apps had felt superficial, full of profiles promising adventure when all he craved was stability. But with Rachel, there was no rush. She understood the unspoken rules, the last-minute cancellations for fevers or meltdowns, the way a parent's heart was always half-occupied. One evening, as Milo dozed on the couch after a long day at the park, Lucas sent, "Rough night here. Milo decided bedtime stories need sound effects. I'm exhausted, but wouldn't trade it." Her reply came with a photo of Ellie curled up with a rabbit plush. "Same. Ellie wanted 3 encores of Twinkle Twinkle." Solidarity. It was Rachel who suggested their next meeting, a casual walk in the nearby Evergreen Park on a crisp Saturday afternoon. Lucas agreed without hesitation, though. Nerves fluttered in his stomach as he packed a small bag with water bottles and snacks. Milo had helped bake cupcakes the night before, mostly smearing frosting everywhere, but one survived intact, topped with a lopsided heart in strawberry icing. For the princess, Milo had declared solemnly, his small hands sticky with pride. Lucas tucked it into a container, wondering if it was too forward, but deciding it was just a kind gesture from a kid who loved sharing. The park was alive with the sounds of autumn leaves crunching underfoot, distant laughter from a playground, the occasional bark of dogs chasing frisbees. Lucas arrived early, spotting Rachel from afar as she approached along the winding path. She wore a light jacket over a sweater, her hair catching the sunlight in soft waves. Her steps were measured, that cautious air still lingering, but when she saw him, her face brightened with a genuine smile. "Hey," she said, falling into step beside him. "This place is beautiful. I haven't been out like this in ages." They walked side by side, the path curving around a small pond where ducks glided lazily. Conversation flowed, as it had in their texts, light, unhurried. Lucas pointed out a cluster of maple trees turning fiery red. Rachel shared how Ellie loved collecting fallen leaves to make fairy crowns. As they reached a bench overlooking the water, Lucas pulled out the container. "This is from Milo," he said, handing it over with a slight grin. "He insisted. Said it's for a princess. Don't worry, it's mostly edible." Rachel opened the lid, her eyes widening at the crooked heart. A laugh bubbled up from her, pure and unguarded, lighting up her face in a way that made Lucas's chest tighten. It was the first time he'd seen her truly let go without the shadow of reservation. "This is perfect," she said, her voice warm. "Ellie would be jealous. Tell him thank you from me and that princesses love strawberry." She took a small bite, offering him half, and they sat there sharing the treat, watching families picnic nearby. The afternoon stretched on the sun, dipping lower, casting long shadows across the grass. They talked about the challenges they rarely admitted to others, the guilt of working late, the fear of missing milestones, the quiet loneliness that crept in after the kids were asleep. Rachel opened up a bit more, mentioning how Ellie's father had left when she was pregnant, how she'd built their life brick by brick. Lucas nodded, sharing a memory of Sarah's last birthday, how he'd promised himself to keep her spirit alive for Milo. No tears, just honest words exchanged like fragile gifts. As they walked back to the parking lot, Rachel paused, turning to him. "This was nice," she said softly. "Really nice." Lucas felt the same, a spark of something hopeful igniting. He didn't push. He just smiled and said, "Let's do it again soon." She nodded, and as she drove away, he stood there for a moment, the park's tranquility mirroring the calm settling in his heart. For the first time, the future didn't feel so daunting. As the weeks slipped by, the easy rhythm of their conversations began to falter. At first it was subtle, a message from Rachel arriving hours later than usual, her responses shorter, laced with vague excuses. Lucas noticed it during a quiet evening at home. Milo sprawled on the living room floor with his crayons, drawing yet another dinosaur adventure. His phone buzzed less frequently now, and when it did, the warmth seemed dimmed. "Sorry, busy day at work," she'd text, or "Ellie had a rough night, talk soon." He told himself it was normal. Single parents lived in a world of unpredictable demands. But deep down, a familiar unease stirred, the kind he'd felt in the early days after Sarah's accident, when hope felt fragile and fleeting. Lucas understood fear all too well. He'd built walls around his own heart for years, convinced that letting someone in meant risking Milo's stability. What if it ended badly? What if Milo grew attached only to have another person vanish from their lives? Rachel's hesitation mirrored his own past doubts, and he didn't push. Instead, he kept his messages light, sharing a funny anecdote about Milo's attempt to cook breakfast burnt toast, slathered in peanut butter, or asking about Ellie's latest rabbit story. But the gaps grew. A suggestion for coffee midweek was met with, "Rain check, Ellie's got a sniffle." A weekend park idea became, "Family stuff came up, maybe next time." He didn't blame her. Rachel had hinted at her history in their talks, men who'd charmed her at first only to bolt when the reality of Ellie set in. "They see the fun parts," she'd said once, her voice soft over the phone, "but not the doctor's appointments or the tantrums. It's too much for most." Lucas had nodded silently then, even though she couldn't see him feeling the echo in his own experiences. He'd been on dates before Milo was old enough to notice brief encounters that fizzled when his role as a dad came up. "You're a great guy," one woman had said, "but I want something uncomplicated." The word had stung, as if Milo were a complication rather than the center of his world. Still, the distance gnawed at him. One rainy Thursday, after tucking Milo into bed with a story about brave knights and hidden treasures, Lucas scrolled through their chat history. The early enthusiasm, the quick replies, the shared laughs contrasted sharply with the recent sparsity. He felt a pang of loss, not just for what might have been, but for the vulnerability he'd allowed himself to feel. Was this how it ended, fading into polite silence like so many connections before? That evening, he decided to call. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. Lucas hesitated, then hung up without leaving a message. Minutes later, his phone lit up with a text. "Sorry, was putting Ellie down. Everything okay?" He stared at the screen, fingers hovering. This was his chance to address the shift, but gently. He typed back, "Yeah, just wanted to hear your voice. Miss our talks." Her reply took longer than usual. "Me too, but things are complicated right now." The next day, another message came, unprompted but heavy. "Lucas, I'm scared. If I let you into my real world, the messy parts, the kid chaos, you might walk away like the others." The words hit him like a cold wave. He could picture her typing them perhaps in her small apartment after Ellie had fallen asleep, the weight of past heartbreaks pressing down. Lucas sat on his couch, the house quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. He thought of Sarah, how she'd encouraged him to live fully, even in her final days. "Don't close off, Luke," she'd whispered once. "Milo needs to see you happy." He responded carefully, his words measured but sincere. "If you let me step in, I'll decide for myself if I stay or not. Don't decide for me." The message sent, and he waited, heart-pounding. Rachel read it almost immediately, but no reply came that night. In the silence, doubt crept in for both of them. For Lucas, it was the fear of pushing too hard and losing the fragile bond they'd built. For Rachel, it was deeper, a whirlwind of self-questioning. Was she ready to risk Ellie's heart or her own? Did she deserve this flicker of hope, or was she just dragging Lucas into the complexities of her life, school runs, ex-partner drama, the endless juggle of work and motherhood? The following days stretched with uncertainty. Lucas threw himself into routines, helping Milo with his puzzles, cooking simple meals, staring at code on his screen. But Rachel's words lingered, a reminder that healing wasn't linear. She wondered if she was sabotaging something good out of habit, protecting herself from pain that might never come. The distance wasn't just physical. It was an invisible barrier built from scars neither had fully shared. Yet in that quiet space, a seed of resolve began to grow for Lucas, a determination not to walk away easily. For Rachel, a tentative willingness to trust. Lucas knew inviting Rachel and Ellie to the school picnic was a risk, but after her text about her fears, he wanted to show her that his world wasn't something to hide from. The event was a simple community affair at Milo's preschool, a grassy field behind the building dotted with picnic tables, balloons tied to fences, and games like sack races and face painting. Parents mingled with plates of sandwiches and fruit kids darting everywhere in bursts of energy. It was the kind of low-pressure gathering that felt safe, or so he hoped. "It'll be fun," he'd texted her. "No expectations, just hot dogs and chaos." After a day of silence, she'd replied, "Okay, we'll come." The day arrived sunny but crisp, the kind of early fall weather that promised sweaters and apple cider. Lucas got there early with Milo setting up a blanket under a shady oak. Milo bounced with excitement, his backpack stuffed with toy cars to share. "Is the princess coming?" he asked for the third time, his eyes wide. Lucas ruffled his hair. "Her name's Rachel, buddy, and yes, with her daughter Ellie." Milo nodded solemnly, as if absorbing a great secret. Rachel pulled up in her compact sedan, parking at the edge of the lot. She emerged first, smoothing her jeans and glancing around with that familiar caution. Ellie followed, a small girl with pigtails and a pink jacket, clutching a stuffed rabbit like a shield. She hid behind her mother's legs, peeking out shyly at the bustling crowd. Lucas waved them over, his smile genuine, but his stomach twisting with nerves. "Hey, glad you made it," he said, kneeling to Ellie's level. "This is Milo. He's got some awesome cars if you want to play." Ellie glanced up at Rachel for permission, her eyes big and uncertain. Rachel nodded, and Milo took charge with the unfiltered enthusiasm of a 5-year-old. "Come say I have a red one that goes super fast." He grabbed her hand without hesitation, leading her to the blanket where his toys were scattered. Ellie hesitated, but followed the rabbit still tucked under her arm. Within minutes, they were racing cars across the grass. Milo's laughter drawing a tentative giggle from Ellie. Rachel watched from the edge of the blanket, her arms crossed, a small smile playing on her lips, but not reaching her eyes. The afternoon unfolded in pockets of joy. Lucas and Rachel joined a parent-child 3-legged race, tying their ankles together with a bandana. They stumbled and laughed, finishing last but not caring. At the food table, they loaded plates with grilled burgers and potato salad, sitting cross-legged while the kids played nearby. Other parents chatted with Lucas, old acquaintances from preschool drop-offs, but Rachel stayed quiet, offering polite nods and short answers. She seemed to shrink into herself whenever someone asked about Ellie, as if bracing for judgment. Lucas noticed his concern growing, but he didn't press in front of the crowd. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the field, the event wound down. Families packed up, kids waving goodbye with painted faces and sticky hands from cotton candy. Lucas helped Rachel gather Ellie's things, Milo chattering about how Ellie won the car race. In the car on the way home, Rachel had offered to drop them off since Lucas's house was nearby. The mood shifted. Ellie dozed in the back seat, Rabbit clutched tight while Milo nodded off beside her. The quiet amplified the unspoken tension. Rachel gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles pale. "That was nice," she said softly, but her voice cracked at the edges. Lucas turned to her, sensing the storm beneath the calm. "Yeah, it was. The kids hit it off." She nodded, eyes fixed on the road. Then after a long pause, "Lucas, Ellie doesn't need another person coming in just to leave. I can't give her that hope." The words tumbled out, laced with the pain of experience. Her ex had promised the world, then vanished. Other dates had followed suit, charmed by her, but scared off by the package deal. Lucas felt an ache in his chest, recognizing the mirror of his own fears. He reached over, hesitating before placing his hand on hers. "I get it. After Sarah, I didn't want Milo getting attached to anyone who might not stick around." Rachel pulled into his driveway, the engine idling. She turned off the ignition but didn't move, tears welling in her eyes. "It's not just her, it's me too. Every time I let someone in, it ends the same. Ellie asks why they don't come back, and I have to lie and say they're busy." Her voice broke, and she wiped at her cheeks. "She deserves better than that instability." Lucas unbuckled his seatbelt, facing her fully. "So do you. What about you, Rachel? Do you need hope?" The question hung between them, raw and direct. She looked at him, vulnerability etched in her features. Tears spilled over as she shook her head. "I don't know anymore. I've been protecting us both for so long." He didn't rush to console her with promises. Instead, he leaned in, his voice steady. "I'm not perfect. Milo's world comes first, just like Ellie's does for you. But if we're both scared, maybe we can be scared together. I won't push, but I'm not walking away unless you tell me to." Rachel let out a shaky breath, the tears flowing freely now. In the back seat, the kid stirred slightly but remained asleep. She reached for his hand, squeezing it briefly. "Okay," she whispered, "but slow. For them." Lucas nodded, a quiet understanding passing between them. As he helped carry a sleepy Milo inside, leaving Rachel to drive home with Ellie, he felt the weight of the day settle not as a burden, but as a step forward through the fear. A week after the picnic, the autumn rain pattered steadily against Lucas's windows, turning the evening into a cozy cocoon of gray skies and warm indoor lights. He'd spent the days replaying their conversation in the car, respecting the space Rachel needed while quietly hoping she wouldn't pull away entirely. Milo had asked about Ellie and her mom once or twice, his innocent questions a reminder of how quickly kids could form bonds. Lucas had distracted him with games and stories, but inside he wrestled with his own uncertainties, wondering if he'd overstepped, if the fragile bridge they'd built could hold. The knock came just after dinner, soft but insistent. Lucas wiped his hands on a dish towel and opened the door to find Rachel standing there, her coat speckled with raindrops, a rolled-up paper in her hands. Ellie wasn't with her. She'd mentioned a sitter earlier in a brief text. Rachel's eyes were bright, a mix of nerves and determination. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice steady despite the slight tremble. Lucas stepped aside, closing the door behind her as the scent of damp earth mingled with the lingering aroma of pasta sauce from the dinner. She unrolled the paper carefully on the kitchen table, a child's drawing in crayon, vibrant and heartfelt. 4 figures held hands under a starry sky, 2 small ones in the middle flanked by adults. Stick arms linked them together, smiles wide and crooked. "Ellie drew this," Rachel said, her fingers tracing the edges. "She said it's our family, her Milo, you and me. She didn't even ask. She just knew." Lucas leaned in, his heart swelling at the simplicity of it. Milo's figure had a dinosaur shirt. Ellie's held a rabbit. "She told me, 'Mommy, this is what happy looks like.'" Rachel's voice caught, and she looked up at him, eyes glistening. "I don't dare promise anything big, Lucas. But if you still want to stay, today I won't stop you anymore." The words hung between them, a quiet surrender to possibility. Lucas reached out, taking her hand first, then pulling her into a gentle embrace. She fit against him naturally, her head resting on his shoulder, the tension in her body easing as he held her. No grand declarations, no rush of passion, just the simple comfort of 2 people choosing vulnerability. "I'm here," he whispered. "We'll figure it out day by day." Rachel pulled back slightly, a small smile breaking through her tears. Day by day sounds good. From the living room, Milo's voice echoed with triumph. I won. Look, Ellie, your rabbit helped. Lucas and Rachel turned to see the kids on the floor absorbed in a video game Milo had set up earlier. Ellie must have arrived with Rachel after all. No, wait. The sitter had dropped her off separately, a detail Rachel had arranged quietly. The girl laughed as Milo handed her the controller, her shyness from the picnic gone in the familiarity of play. The stuffed rabbit sat between them like a mascot overseeing their makeshift victory dance. They all ended up on the couch, the adults sipping hot tea while the children chattered about their game. Rachel leaned against Lucas, her hand in his, watching Ellie and Milo build a tower from cushions nearby. For the first time in years, she felt the knot in her chest loosen, a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, no wedding bells or sweeping promises. It was real. Two scarred hearts deciding to stay two children, weaving their own innocent connections. Rachel glanced at Lucas, squeezing his hand. Thank you for not giving up, she murmured. He smiled back. Thank you for letting me in. As the evening wound down, with the kids yawning and the rain softening to a drizzle outside, a sense of quiet hope settled over the house. It wasn't perfect. There would be more fears to face, more days of doubt, but in this moment, it was enough. Two single parents, once convinced happiness was out of reach, had found a way to breathe again together. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that second chances come in small, patient steps, please share it with someone who needs to hear that love doesn't require perfection, just the courage to stay. Hit that subscribe button for more stories that prove families are built one day at a time. I'll see you in the next one.